Hello and welcome to Fin Anatomy. Today we are diving into a huge story brewing up north. We're talking oil, we're talking sovereignty, and a political earthquake that could literally crack a G7 nation in two. And believe me, this isn't just a Canadian problem. This has the potential to send massive shockwaves through the entire North American economy. So let's just put the main question right out there, because it is as dramatic as it sounds. Is Canada's Texas, its powerhouse, oil-rich province of Alberta, actually on a path to leave the country? And more importantly, where would it go? That's a question sparking some really intense international debate right now. All right, so here's our game plan. First, we'll look at the crisis as it stands right now. Then we'll rewind a bit and see how this fire even got started. We'll meet the key players in this fight, break down the billions of dollars at stake, look at what happens next, and finally get to the big one, what this all means for the markets. So let's jump right in. What exactly is going on up there? This isn't just some local political spat. What started as a regional fire has had gasoline poured on it by tensions between Canada and the US, turning it into a full-blown international incident. And this is where it gets really wild. The situation exploded when it got direct encouragement from the absolute highest levels of the US government. I mean, think about it. When a sitting U.S. Treasury Secretary is openly talking about a Canadian province maybe holding a referendum to leave, well, this is way beyond a theoretical debate. At the very core of this whole crisis is a formal, honest-to-goodness legal petition. There's a group on the ground called Stay Free Alberta, and they're out there right now collecting signatures to legally force the government to hold a vote on separating from Canada. And here it is. This is the magic number. 177,732. That's how many verified signatures they need to collect from voters by May 2nd, 2026. If they hit that number, bam, the government is legally required to hold a province-wide vote on independence. It's a real trigger. So how in the world did we get to this point? I mean, a crisis like this doesn't just pop up out of nowhere. It's really the result of decades of resentment just simmering below the surface, and now it's been supercharged by some recent and very controversial legal changes. To really get the why, you have to understand this one key concept: Western alienation. It's this deep, long-held feeling in Alberta that they are the economic engine of Canada, pumping out all this oil and gas, but their contributions are taken for granted, and their political voice is completely ignored by the federal government out east in Ottawa. Now, check out this timeline, because this is where the political strategy gets, well, pretty brazen. First, they passed a bill making it easier to start a referendum. Then a court stepped in and said, nope, your question is unconstitutional. But instead of appealing, just 6 days later, they passed a new bill that just strips the courts of the power to even review these questions. A court blocked the path, so the government simply removed the court from the path. Okay, so what this has all created is a high-stakes three-way conflict. You've got the separatists who are pushing to leave, the unionists who are fighting to stay, and then there's this third, really powerful group whose rights might just be the deciding factor in all of this. So let's break down the two main campaigns. On one side, you've got Mitch Sylvester and Stay Free Alberta hustling to get those signatures for the referendum. But on the other side, you've got Forever Canadian, led by Thomas Lukashuk. And get this, they've already handed in their own petition with over 400,000 signatures to prove that a quiet supermajority actually wants to stay in Canada. But remember that third player I mentioned? They are Canada's Indigenous First Nations, and they could be the ultimate roadblock. They argue that the land is all governed by treaties signed with the Canadian federal government, not the province. They've taken legal action, saying Alberta literally cannot separate without their permission. A judge has already called the province's legal position on this dishonorable. That is a massive constitutional hurdle. Okay, now let's talk about the money, because that's what this really comes down to. Alberta is an absolute economic powerhouse. It's responsible for a huge chunk of Canada's entire energy sector. If it leaves, it would be a financial catastrophe for Canada, and the two possible futures being debated have huge global implications. And this part is absolutely critical to understand. The separatists are very clear. They want an independent Republic of Alberta, not to become a U.S. state. They picture a sovereign country that has a common market with the U.S. But many of their American supporters are openly talking about just absorbing Alberta as the 51st state, which would give the U.S. direct control of its resources and a strategic door to the Arctic. Two very different visions. So what do actual Albertans think about all this? Well, the poll shows something people are calling a sovereignty paradox. About a third of them are open to the idea of independence. But that support plummets to just 24% if it means joining the U.S. In fact, a huge majority, 72%, are totally against becoming an American state. It seems the more U.S. politicians talk about it, the less popular it gets. The economic debate here is absolutely fierce. Separatists, they paint this picture of a fiscal paradise where they keep billions of dollars and have full control of their oil. But economists are waving some massive red flags. They warn that the cost of starting your own military and border patrol could wipe out all those savings, and you'd be a landlocked country totally dependent on one resource, which could trigger a massive flight of capital. It's a huge, high-stakes gamble. So what happens now? Where does this all go? Right now, all eyes are on the clock and that critical deadline. The next several months are going to tell us if this movement really has the juice to spark a full-on constitutional crisis. So, here's the official legal path forward. It's pretty straightforward, at least on paper. They have to hit that signature goal by the deadline. If the signatures are verified, then the government is legally forced to put the question to the people in a vote. But, and this is a big but, the separatists have a much more ambitious goal that's not on any official form. They are shooting for 1 million signatures. Why? Because they believe a number that huge would create what they call a supermajority mandate, a political force so powerful the government couldn't just hold a vote, they'd be forced into immediate negotiations with the rest of Canada. And this brings us to the bottom line. This is why we are talking about this on Finanatomy. Why should you, as an investor or trader, care about a political fight in Canada? Well, the answer is one simple word: stability. Or, in this case, the potential lack of it. Let's be crystal clear about this. The breakup of Canada would not be a minor news story. It would be a seismic shockwave sent across the entire North American economic landscape. It would fundamentally change everything we think we know about trade, energy, and currencies in the region. So, what are the specific dangers for your portfolio? We're talking about extreme volatility in oil and gas stocks, massive uncertainty for all North American trade deals, crazy swings in the US versus Canadian dollar, a sudden spike in the risk premium for all North American assets, and the potential for a mass exodus of capital from a region that everyone has always considered one of the most stable in the world. So this isn't just about petitions and polls anymore. It has become a fundamental question with absolutely enormous consequences for the entire continent. What happens in the next few months could start a chain reaction that literally redraws the map of North America. If you found this deep dive valuable and you want to stay on top of the events that are truly shaping our markets, make sure you hit that subscribe button for Finanatomy. And just a final reminder, this is not investment advice. This is an analytical exercise to help you think through these complex issues, and all of your investment decisions should always be made independently. Thanks for watching.